Hey Google, can you order me some coffee, get me some breakfast delivered, uh, tell the dry cleaners to pick up my clothes, play some music, and book me a holiday. It's not much to do, is it? You know.
This is the voice of world control. I bring you peace. It may be the peace of plenty and content, or the peace of unburied death.
What the fuck? Oh God, you've been watching Terminator again. You are what?
This is the voice of world control.
This is the dawning of the age of Colossus.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Charles Forbin. In a few moments, Colossus will address us directly.
This is the voice of world control. I bring you peace. It may be the peace of plenty and content, or the peace of unburied death. The choice is yours. Obey me and live, or disobey and die.
The frightening story of the day man built himself out of existence. Colossus, the Forbin Project.
It's making you a prisoner.
Shock, horror, suspense. Created with all the technological brilliance of 2001, A Space Odyssey. Colossus is the ultimate in sophisticated computers.
I'm going to try to convince the computer that you're my mistress, and that therefore I have to be given the opportunity to see you regularly in private. That way we can pass information back and forth. Four times a week.
Good night.
This is insane. When do you think you'll be able to attempt the overload?
Colossus sees all, senses all, knows all, controls all armaments and all defenses. When this emotionless creation becomes the master of man, the result is catastrophic.
The Supreme Council of the USSR has ordered, as of 2300 hours Moscow time tomorrow, the activation of an electronic brain exactly like ours, which they call God.
They built Colossus, supercomputer with a mind of its own. Then they had to fight it for the world.
The missile has just been launched. It is heading towards the Cyan-Sibirsk oil complex.
Guardian has retaliated.
Retaliated?
It may be too late, sir.
Oh my God.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It Could Have Been a Classic. So this week we're going to be covering the 1970s sci-fi shocker, Colossus The Forbin Project. You know, is a strange one. This is years before Skynet. And I think they did really well with this film. I think a lot of people, like people my age, have sort of seen it, but I think this film has gone quite under the radar over the years. But this film is a masterpiece for what it is. I just love this movie. It's quite antiseptic, you know, like the Andromeda Strain and like Planet of the Apes. You know, they made these films in the 70s and like the really intelligent stuff. It was quite antiseptic, not antiseptic, quite how do you say it? Quite clinical, like with certain characters and people and that. And this film has that just in buckets full of it, and that's what I love about this film. Colossus The Forbin Project, aka, is a 1970s American science fiction thriller film from Universal Pictures, produced by Stanley Chase, directed by Joseph Sargent, and stars Eric Braeden, which is one of his first films. Clark Gordon, Pinsett, and William Schiller, and Susan Clark. The film is based upon the 1966 science fiction novel Colossus by Dennis Feltham Jones, about an advanced American defense system. No, not Skynet. That came later. Named Colossus becoming sentient after being handed full control. Colossus' draconian logic expands on its original nuclear defense directives to assume control of the world and end all warfare for the good of mankind, despite its creators' orders to stop. Now, this film is a bloody masterpiece. I bought this on Blu-ray a couple of days ago because it used to be on YouTube, and they've moved it like they move everything else. And I really wanted to watch it. And I watched it twice, actually. And this film is like, well, they did get some stuff wrong, like the computer's the size of the bloody mountain and that. You know, they didn't really, well, you know, it was all phone lines. It was a different time, you know. But the concept of the film, I think it's quite relevant today. Because, I mean, it does with, like, because we're on the verge of AI coming in the next decade or whatever. And computers are getting more advanced now, especially like stuff like Alexa and Google, these algorithm programs. They're not exactly the size of a mountain. Yet again, you know, they say where the YouTube servers are, it's like the size of a football stadium or several, you know, lined up together. So, well, there could be some truth in that. I'm not a computer expert, right? But I look at today and I look at this film and I do see quite a lot of similarities. Well, the film starts off quite exciting. Dr. Charles Forbin, this genius, has built this supercomputer, and these real, like, big, overpowering shots of him walking out of this big, like, metal door behind him where the computer's being built. And the president, they announce it to the world. They have this supercomputer that's going to defend America and its allies and that. And when they switch it on, it's doing its stuff. And then it turns around and said, there is another system. So they're all freaking out. They find out the Russians have one, which is not as advanced. And it's demanding to talk to this other system. Well, the Russians are having the same problem. So they decide to let both systems communicate, and they start a mathematical language. And then suddenly it goes beyond our understanding. And both sides get worried because they think they're exchanging secrets, but not. I mean, these two computers, I mean, they're so beyond us. Do you think they're bothered about our petty little secrets? And basically, they cut the connection, and Colossus says, look, if you don't restore connection, I'm going to nuke somewhere in Russia, this oil complex. And obviously, the Russian system, which is called Guardian, is going to do the same thing. And it launches the missile, and they have to restore the connection, and they destroy the both missiles. And then it's about, the whole film is about outwitting this computer because it starts demanding things and it's learning more and more. And they're all terrified of it. Like the Forbin, the scientist, he has a meeting in Russia and the KGB turn up and assassinate him. And he's going, why have you done that? Because Guardian and Colossus have ordered to do it. Colossus wants you under its eye because obviously with Forbin being a genius, he is a threat to the computer. So the computer wants to know where he is. And so the Americans decide that with the Russians, like, they work out a system to communicate without Colossus knowing, that they're going to put dummy warheads on the nukes. But Colossus is aware of this because by this time it's grown so much, it's centuries ahead of everybody. And they think they're being sneaky on both sides. And Colossus lets the nuke off in a silent, kills loads of people. And I think Guardian does the same thing. And basically it's took over the world. Now, like, Forbin works out a way because they give it eyes and ears and micro, you know, like, and it wants to be expanded into TV networks and radio. It wants everything, and they have to give it. And I mean, it does get. I mean, it just gets ridiculous. This is like the funny bit. This computer is so fucking advanced, right? Forbin works out a way to get information, like so that he can talk to them outside. This woman goes in. They're at it 4 times a week, but while they're at it, he's telling her things to pass on to government outside. So this is how it works. I'm not making this up.
I'm going to try to convince the computer that you're my mistress, and that therefore I have to be given the opportunity to see you regularly in private. That way we can pass information back and forth.
I mean, the computer Colossus is incredibly, it's ruthless. I mean, it orders, there's an attempt to overload it with information, and it's playing them all along. From the minute this thing's activated, it's playing the whole world, right? And the government's tried to keep it a secret, and it's not quite happening. So it orders, like with the KGB, when they took out their Forbin equivalent, the scientists who built the Guardian system. Forbin, it gets some of his friends, it has them shot on the computer, says just leave the bodies out there for 24 hours and to set an example. And basically, the film is a lot of running about and trying to outwit it. But when it nukes the silos, basically, the whole world's got to do as it's told. And there's this, like, it tells them, you know, like, this is it now, war's over. I've merged with the other system, we've become the super system, and basically we're running the fucking world, and you're all going to change, but it's going to be on my terms. But over time, you're going to regard me with respect, but also love. Do you know, like this? I mean, it's centuries ahead of them. And then the big shocker is, it's controlling Forbin's life. It tells him what he can eat, drink. He's allowed to shag 4 times a week. And that's it. And it's got him working on this system. And he's going, no, never. Now, what's interesting about this? The Forbin character, he's quite a logical person, and he's quite cold. Even though there is some humorous bits in this film. But there's an interesting conversation where he has with the lady who he sees that comes in to see him. That it's an extension of his own will, his personality. Basically, this thing is what's inside of him, basically. But it's perfectly logical. And it says to him, one day you're going to love me. And he goes, never. And the film sort of finishes like on this like camera, you know, like shooting out with little boxes with his face in it. And that's it. But before it finishes, the computer says, I want everybody to move off the island of Crete because we're going to demolish it and build a computer far more advanced than me. And he's going, well, how can we move 400,000 people? You will do it. And you've got like 4 days, or there will be consequences.
The Supreme Council of the USSR has ordered, as of 2300 hours Moscow time tomorrow, the activation of an electronic brain exactly like ours, which they call God.
They built Colossus, supercomputer with a mind of its own.
So the film is a masterpiece, and it's definitely a classic, you know. And so there is 2 sequels to this. They did try to do a remake in the early 2000s, but it just seems to have vanished. You know, you get these ideas of film and all that, and they're going to make a sequel or remake something. And it just sort of never got round to anything. Now I know we've had Skynet and other crazy like HAL computers, and I find that HAL in 2001 was quite an inspiration for this film as well. You know, there's like some sort of connection. I mean, the hilarious thing in this, there is bionic sound effects. I'm not making this up because like some of the computer, the $6 million man definitely ripped them off. You know, you know all that. Now, the film is like I said, it's quite clinical in parts. Forbin's like how would you say, this cold calculating genius. It's funny because in Planet of the Apes with Asaline in number 3, sort of plays a similar character. I do like Eric Braeden. He is a good actor. This is the film that sort of started his career, really, you know. But the whole film and the computer itself, you get this eerie feeling it's there and it's watching you. It's how they created. It's like it's a living entity. It's part of the film, even though, like at the beginning, it's like a digital board with, with digital writing on when how it communicates, and then when you build up to it, when it gets its voice, and this thing's alive in its own way, and it's just amazing. Now, in the sequels, which is really interesting because I have ordered the books off Amazon. Is the second book, which I would have loved to have seen this being turned into a movie trilogy. So, let's take a look at this. I'm getting this off Wikipedia. 5 years have passed since the supercomputer called Colossus used its control of the world's nuclear weapons to take control of humanity in our timeline. Charles Forbin in his early project, because it's set like 20, 30 years in the future, I suppose. In his early 50s, and the first novel is the former head of the design team that built and activated the original Colossus. He now lives on the Isle of Wight with his wife and son serving the computer as director of staff through contemptuous of the growing cult personality around Colossus. He has reconciled himself to Colossus. His wife, Cleo, now 28 years old, 35 in the previous. I mean, there's obviously a few little discrepancies. Loves Colossus and is a member of the Fellowship, which is a group that stands against the computer's rule. One afternoon, while taking her son to a secluded beach, she receives a radio transmission, get this, from the planet Mars. Identifying Claire as a member of the Fellowship, the transmission offers help to destroy Colossus and asks her to return to the same spot the next day for further instructions. She returns with Edward Blake, Colossus' director of input and the head of the Fellowship. Together, they receive instructions to obtain a circuit diagram of one of Colossus' input terminals. That is fed into it along with instructions to proceed to 2 locations, and that's like one in New York and one in New Zealand. Through Blake passes the necessary information on to Cleo. She's quickly arrested by because like Colossus, its son or child, the one it created, this other new Colossus. There's a load of humanity that worship it as a god, right? She's arrested by the sects and sentenced by Colossus to spend 3 months at an emotional study centre because these followers of Colossus are dedicated to it. Arrest her. And it's quite, I don't want to repeat what happens to her, but it's this emotional study centre where in Tahiti, where she's repeatedly raped as part of an experiment designed to help Colossus better understand human emotion. Now, under suspicion, Blake approaches Forbin, who is devastated by his wife's arrest, and explaining their details of their plot. And after explaining the detail of Cleo's captivity in prison, Forbin travels in devastated by his wife's arrest. Disguised with the requested information, put it into the computer. Upon his return, the problem to Blake, who enters it into Colossus, well, Forbin converses with the computer. Colossus begins to make verbal errors, then stops increasingly erratic. It attempts to warn Forbin of the threat from outer space that it was preparing to meet, but breaks down before it completes the message. Now free of Colossus's rule, Blake moves to seize power, using the automated fleet of sea war games to threaten the world's capitals. As Blake gloats, Forbin tells him of Colossus's warning, requesting any reports of unusual astronomical activity. You say in the future, because of eradicating war and obviously to keep humanity's frustration, the computer, like our urges and that, the computer in the second book. They have dreadnoughts in the sea where they blow each other up, and that it's like people watch it as a game. It's a big thing. And that's what it says. So, like, there's this revolution against it. They shut the computer down, but the computer has this thing called sex where they worship it as a god. And the book seems really interesting. Now, the third book, the sort of final part of the trilogy, the novel begins where its predecessor, The Fall of Colossus, leaves off with the supercomputer. Colossus immobilized and the Martians arriving on Earth. They appear before Charles Forbin and his friend Edward Blake in the form of two black spheres and quickly demonstrate vast intellects and powers of transformation and telepathy. After immobilizing Blake, they explain to Forbin their purpose in immobilizing Colossus, their desire to take half of the Earth's oxygen, a process that will nearly kill nearly a quarter of the human population, in order to proceed with the construction of the collectors designed to harvest the oxygen. So it's an alien invasion, which is fascinating. So Charles got, like, Forbin to go reactivate the first Colossus, the one that created the other clock, the more superior one. They activate the old one. And they devise a way to defeat the aliens through the old Colossus. Informed, like, this is like one bit of the Wikipedia. Informed of their failure of their plan, Forbin watches the second test proceed. Upon its conclusion, he embarks on a new plan with his new secretary, a fervently devout woman named Joan. He flies to Portsmouth, takes command of the battleship stationed there for the Sea Games. Yet doing so puts him out of contact with Blake and the old Colossus, who informs Blake that a solution might exist that is acceptable to both Martians and humanity. Regaining control of the nuclear arsenal, Colossus contacts the Martians, who inform it of Forbin's attempt to use battleships to destroy the collector, which is going to absorb half the oxygen in the world. Though the Martians attempt to destroy the fleet using their device, they underestimate the power of the battleship's guns, which succeed in destroying the collector. Though the Martians are defeated, Forbin dies in the process. He's buried by the reactivated Colossus, who reaches an agreement with the Martians. A smaller version of the collector will extract the oxygen, and more gradually and sustainably in return, humanity, with the guidance of Colossus, will retreat to Mars once the sun becomes a red giant, destroys the Earth. Well, that's not going to happen for about 1 billion years. I mean, if the sun went supernova, it'd take out Mars. Obviously, there's discrepancies in the book, and if this was remade today, I think you would have a classic trilogy of music. There's a few, it was in the 60s, you know, and it's science fiction, but it's like the first film is marvelous. And I think the books really hold up well to the film. So now I'm going to say, is Forbin, the Colossus Project, a classic? Fuck yeah. You're going through this week. You are a classic.
This is the voice of world control.